Hello and welcome to another tutorial from Mike Dolan Games. Today we're going to continue our Freelancer style mouse controls in Unreal Engine tutorial series. So this is part 2. In the first tutorial we covered the actual movement with the mouse, so the movement that you're seeing here. And in this tutorial we're going to cover the UI to kind of give the player a better sense of how the controls are working. So we're going to add a custom crosshair and then also these arrows that show and hide the farther away we get from the center. So if you did not do the first tutorial, you may want to check that out if you're interested in how the mouse works. If you're just interested in kind of how I put together this UI, you're in the right place. Alright, so the first thing you're going to need is some kind of textures, some little textures. So you're going to need some sort of custom crosshair. This one's less important. There is a little X built into Unreal. You can kind of see it on my screen right here, and I can show you how to set that up. Otherwise, you'll need a crosshair like this, and you'll also need some sort of arrow type of thing. So with a transparent background. So this is only like 12 by 21 pixels, and the arrow is pointing to the right, and that's important. So make sure when you make this sprite, make sure it's pointing to the right. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is right click, and you're going to go down to user interface and set up a widget blueprint. And I'm just going to call this one Arrow HUD. This is going to be our base HUD, but if you want to put like armor or shields or anything like that on the screen and have it be static, you should probably make a different HUD for this because this one's going to rotate. Once you have that, just double click on it. And here's our screen here. So we're going to add, we have our canvas panel, which is our, that's actually what we're going to use to rotate. But inside the canvas panel, we want to add some images. So just grab and drag. You want to try to put it in the center. And you can actually look at your anchors here, and I'm going to select the center and put it in the center as best I can. And then, actually, I don't know if this, yeah, so if I do it this way, because it's a rectangle, it's using that corner. Anyway, we're going to go down to, okay, so under appearance here, under brush, that's where the image is that you can select. So if I go in here, I might not be able to see it, but if I type arrow, there's a couple different arrow materials and things like that. I think this is a mouse cursor. You could try to use that, I guess. I'm going to go back to my example, click it. Now that I have it selected, I can just press this and I'll fill it in. So you see mine is stretched right now. Let's see if we can, no, okay. So we'll just do 30 by 30. And then when you select off of it, it looks like that. Alright, and then we're going to actually copy this. So just, once you have one, Control W to make another one. And we'll just slide this out. And you can make it a little bit bigger. So that's what I have on mine. And then you can copy another one, put it out here. We might have to adjust how centered these are, just depending on how it looks. Alright, so you might want to rename these two. If you just click on and press F2, you can do arrow 1, select it, arrow 2, and arrow 3. Alright, Now, the way this works is when we select the canvas panel, there is a way to basically rotate this canvas panel. One of the tricks to these this UI is it doesn't function the same way as like in our 3D space. So we don't have like a rotation here. We have a translation to scale, and then we have this angle. So you'll see I have some funky blueprint stuff to make this work, but you'll see here we're pivoting around the center, and we have an angle, and the angle goes to 180. All right, so, and 0, I believe, is the center. Okay, so if you want to go, if you're turning down, it's positive, and then if you're going back, it's negative. So that's another thing to keep in mind. All right, so you'll see I'm doing some weird blueprint stuff to manipulate this angle. We don't want to manipulate each one of these because we want them all to turn at the same time. All right, so we're kind of done with Designer. You can change the color of these. Just select the image and like select tint. You can make them whatever color you want. So that one's green, green, green. I always like green. All right. Now, if you come up here, click on Graph. Now we are in kind of the blueprint, basically, of our widget. So in here, there's a couple things we're going to do. The first thing we'll do is set it up so that on the event construct, I don't think I need this one, so I'm going to close it. I'm going to delete this. It's just distracting me. All right. So on this event construct, we're going to set a way to set the mouse up. So if you right-click and then get player controller, all right, and then pull off of the return value and type in, I think it's if you show mouse cursor, yeah. So you want to set show mouse cursor. It's basically a boolean. And we'll set that to true. So now when this HUD loads, we'll show our mouse cursor. You need some sort of blueprint widget that will set this up for you, and the HUD has to be on the screen. So this actually won't work until we set up our HUD to actually be printed to the screen. And then from here, you can actually set current mouse cursor. Maybe it's just set mouse cursor. Let's see. There is a way to set cursor. Get cursor, set cursor. So I guess it's just called set cursor. Yeah. And here you can actually set it to different ones. You can set it to none, you can set it to default. And so what I was saying before is there's a crosshair that you can do. And once we fire this up, you'll have that. So we'll do that for now. Okay. Next, we want to use our event tick here. All right. And we are going to set this up so that we can rotate our arrows. So how do we do that? Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to get our mouse position from the center. And we have that already in our blueprint function library here. This is the get position from center. So we're going to call this function to get our mouse. So we did that last time. So get mouse position from center right here. All right, so once we have that, I'm actually going to promote these to variables just to make it a little bit cleaner. Because we're going to use these values a few times. Okay. All right, so we're setting the mouse X and the mouse Y here. we're getting the center, where our mouse is in the center, from the center. And that's important because the farther away we go from the center, the more arrows we want to show. All right, so from here, we're going to call set render transform angle. Okay, so that's that angle I was showing you before. And if we do it on self, this is going to grab that panel. So self will actually take the canvas panel. So we don't have to set this to anything. So we can just leave this target here. If you want to rotate a specific thing, you could probably drag it in, and I think it will work. It has to have some sort of transform angle attached to it. So anyway, now we need the angle. So to get the angle, we're going to take our mouse X, we're going to take our mouse Y, and then we're going to do an atan 2 degrees. So, oh yeah, and atan is reversed, so Y is on top. So atan 2, so this is like some trigonometry. And then X. So remember, Y is on top, X is on bottom. And this is going to take the mouse coordinates and give us the degrees the degrees of an angle where the mouse is if the center of the screen was basically the 0, 0 point on a graph, and basically up is 90 and the bottom is 0. So we're going to multiply. Do I need to multiply this by anything? No, I don't think so. Okay, we're just going to drag this in. So this is actually, I think that's actually all we need to do to get it. And then once we have that, we want to have another function that will show the arrows. But let's test this out. So if I go back to my map and I press play, you'll see nothing happens. In fact, our mouse disappears still and everything. So why is that? We haven't shown our HUD. So to do that, we need to create a player controller. That's where I would put this on. So if we go to Blueprint class, and we just go to player controller here, and player controller, and we'll call this sort controller. I don't know, something like that. You can call it whatever you want. So once you have that, open it up. And in our event graph, on event begin play, we are going to create, and then what did we call our HUD? Arrow HUD, W. Or, well, if you just type create widget, and then in here you can find W arrow HUD, that's what we named it. And we're going to create our widget, and then we're going to add it to the viewport. Add to viewport, like that. And you have to drag over the return value because that's what we're adding to the viewport. Alright, so that's all we need to do for this. And you can do all sorts of stuff with your player controller. This could be where you switch vehicles and things like that. I made another tutorial about that. Okay. So now that we have this controller, we have to go into our world settings, go into our game mode, and we want to drag our controller to the player controller. So now we have this controller here. Save, press play. Now you have your arrows. Now the mouse is showing, but it's not showing the crosshairs, but it is not disappearing on the screen. So that's interesting. Okay. So anyway, let's continue with the arrows. The next thing we need is a way to kind of like grow the arrows and hide them and show them. So to do that, we are going to make a function. And so come over to the functions, click new function, and we'll call this handle arrows. All right, and in handle arrows, we are going to take two values. So under inputs, sometimes this detailed panel is actually on the other side. I'm not exactly sure what happened here, but that's okay. So in your inputs, you're going to want two parameters, and the two parameters you're going to want are mouse x, and it's a float, and then mouse y. Okay, and we have that, and we also have access to these arrows, which is good. So now we need to get basically like some sort of distance or magnitude from the center that these two have, or just like the value. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to take the absolute value of each of these, Control W to duplicate, and then I'm just going to add them together. Now there's a probably more finessed way to do this, but this is just a quick way to do it. You might want to generate some sort of distance value or whatever, but this works pretty well. Okay, and then greater than. So what you're going to do here is set a distance for each of the arrows. So the smallest arrow, if you're like 100 away from the center, will show it. If you're 300 away, you'll show the next arrow, and if you're 500 away, you'll show the final arrow. All right, and we're going to repeat a bunch of code. So what I'm going to do is create another function, which is called show arrow. And in show arrow, we're going to take two variables as well. We're going to take a should show, and that's going to be a boolean. And then we'll take the arrow, which is what, a widget or something? Widget transform, object reference. Just a widget. Okay, I think it's an object and a widget. Let's see if I can. So object type. Type in widget again. User widget? Widget. Okay, so yeah, that was harder to find than I thought. So arrow and widget. So we're going to take the arrow that we're going to show. Okay, basically in here, just do a branch. If it's true, we'll show. So then we're just going to do set visibility. And we're actually going to duplicate this because we're going to have, we also need to handle the false condition for this. And so target, we can make this a little nicer. Sorry, it's a little bit spaghetti. And set this one to hidden. Okay, so now basically, if we have a true statement in here, we'll set it to true, set it to visible, and if not, we'll set it to not visible. All right, we don't have to return anything. Okay, so back in here, we're going to pull out our function now, show arrow, and we can connect it to our event here. All right, so now, if it's greater than 100, we're going to, oh, I made my variable show. Okay, that doesn't matter right now. But now we just want to grab our first arrow, bring it down here, and feed it in. All right. Now we're going to duplicate. We're actually going to duplicate it a third time, like that. And then we will duplicate this. And we can just feed these as well. Okay, so we have this one, and so we have 100, and then the numbers that I kind of liked were 300 and 500. One of the problems with the way I'm doing it is the vertical height is shorter than the horizontal height, so this kind of makes the arrows pop up more faster in one direction than the other, so it's not as sensitive. So we'll get arrow 2, get arrow 3. So again, you could tweak it to, wait, put this here, put that there, put that in there. Anyway, it's a little bit messy. So drop that in here. So now we have our greater than 100, greater than 300, greater than 500. And each time we'll either show or hide based on whether or not those come true. All right. Okay, so that's what that looks like. So this is handle arrows. And then that was show arrow. If we go back to our event graph now, we have our rotation, and now we just want to pull in handle arrows, connect it, and we need to bring back in our two mouse things. So if you just highlight those and then Shift W, you can just bring it over, and we'll flip them. So it goes there and there. So you're just feeding those same values in that we got from our special function to handle the arrows. You'll see now we have our arrows are going in and out. All right. So the farther away we go. So the faster we go, the more arrows there are. All right. Let me show you real quick how to set up a custom cursor. Hopefully it will work a little bit better than that cursor that we just did. So to do that, you just need another user interface and widget blueprint, and we'll just call this W custom cursor. All right. And then in here, we're going to add another image. And we're going to put it right at the top corner, as close as you can get. And then I think my custom crosshair is called circle. So you want the so you can resize it to the right shape that you like. And then you can tint it again, so I'll make mine green. All right, so you just want it in the top corner here. Now once you have that, compile and save. I don't know if I saved any of this stuff, so I'm going to save it now. All right, so once you have your custom cursor, that's all you have to do for this. You can go into your project settings. Okay, so if you need to find your project settings, if you go to edit, it's project settings. Mine is always open. So once you go to project settings, type in cursor in the top here, and you'll see hardware and software cursors. I've been using the software cursor. So if you just click this plus, it will allow you to change any of these crosshairs. So we actually set ours to crosshair, right? So if you select this crosshairs. You can set it to default as well if you don't have it set to anything. And then go to custom cursor. So now we're adding our custom cursor anytime we set up a crosshair cursor. Okay, so one last thing we have to do before we can see our custom cursor is we need to go back into our arrow HUD. And I noticed that I had a bug here where this set cursor function wasn't working, and it's because it's the wrong blueprint node. So what we need to do is pull off of the player controller. And when we pull off the player controller, the context menu will actually find this. Set current mouse cursor. So if you type in set current, you'll see set current mouse cursor. And instead of a blue, it's like a little greenish. Okay, and that's how you know it's different. And with this one, it has the drop down just like before, where it's set to crosshairs. The other thing that's different is we're actually connecting the player controller as the target here. Okay, so now we have that set up and we save it. And when we go to play, as soon as I click on the screen to have my mouse control the screen, we've got our crosshair and we've got our arrows. So that is how you do it. That basically completes our Freelancer mouse controls with the UI. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like and subscribe, and look for my other tutorials on creating a space game in Unreal Engine 4. We've got a bunch of different ones. I'll be adding ones on weapon systems, radar, flying around the galaxy, things like that. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed the video, and happy game making.